Welcome to Frema Audiobooks. Today, we explore The Art of Happiness by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a profound guide to cultivating lasting joy, inner peace, and meaningful living. In this audiobook, listeners will discover how happiness is not dependent on material wealth, external circumstances, or fleeting pleasures, but arises from the cultivation of compassion, mindfulness, and conscious engagement with life. The Dalai Lama, blending Eastern philosophy with modern psychology, provides practical tools for developing mental clarity, emotional balance, and deep contentment. As you journey through this audiobook, you'll learn to navigate life's challenges with resilience, transform suffering into growth, and create a life filled with purpose, love, and inner peace. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and comment to support Frema Audiobooks and join a community dedicated to personal growth, spiritual development, and conscious living. By applying these teachings consistently, listeners can experience a transformation in both their inner life and outward relationships. The Dalai Lama begins by emphasizing that the ultimate purpose of life is happiness. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on their own understanding of happiness and recognize that most people mistakenly search for it in external achievements, status, or possessions. True happiness, he explains, is an inner state of well-being that arises when the mind is calm, compassion is cultivated, and awareness is anchored in the present moment. By training the mind and heart, individuals can foster a profound sense of joy that is independent of circumstance, resilient in the face of adversity, and deeply nourishing to both self and others. Listeners are reminded that happiness is not a luxury but a fundamental human goal, and cultivating it is a practical, attainable skill. Another key insight is the importance of mental discipline in creating happiness. The Dalai Lama explains that the mind is like a garden. If left unattended, negative thoughts, anger, and fear can dominate, leading to suffering and dissatisfaction. Listeners are encouraged to notice the patterns of their own mind and recognize moments when unhelpful thoughts arise. Through practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and reflection, the mind can be trained to focus on positive qualities, cultivate gratitude, and foster a compassionate perspective. Ta emphasizes in his way, similarly, that mental discipline is not about suppressing thought, but about consciously choosing what to nourish. Listeners are reminded that by caring for the mind and heart, happiness becomes a natural and enduring part of life. The Dalai Lama also discusses the role of compassion as central to lasting happiness. True joy, he explains, arises when the well-being of others is considered alongside one's own. Listeners are encouraged to observe moments of selfishness, judgment, or indifference, and consciously cultivate kindness, empathy, and understanding. By extending compassion, individuals strengthen relationships, reduce conflict, and foster a sense of connection that is essential to both personal and communal well-being. Compassion, as a deliberate practice, becomes a powerful tool for transforming mental habits and creating a stable foundation for happiness. Listeners are reminded that cultivating compassion enriches not only the lives of others, but their own inner peace and joy. Another essential principle is acceptance of reality. The Dalai Lama explains that suffering often arises from resisting what is, whether circumstances, other people, or one's own limitations. Listeners are encouraged to notice moments when they struggle against reality or cling to idealized visions of how life should be. By accepting the present moment with awareness, individuals reduce unnecessary suffering and open the door to constructive action and genuine contentment. Acceptance is not resignation but a conscious recognition of reality, allowing one to respond intelligently and compassionately to life's challenges. Listeners are reminded that acceptance strengthens mental clarity, emotional resilience, and inner peace. The Dalai Lama also highlights the importance of balancing desire and detachment. While it is natural to have goals, ambitions, and preferences, attachment to outcomes can lead to disappointment and frustration. Listeners are encouraged to pursue goals with dedication, while maintaining a flexible, mindful approach that allows for life's unpredictability. By cultivating detachment, individuals can enjoy achievements and relationships fully without being overwhelmed by expectation or loss. Happiness arises from the balance between engagement and non-attachment, allowing life to be lived fully without compulsive striving or fear. Listeners are reminded that mastering this balance is essential to creating lasting inner joy. Another key aspect is training the heart alongside the mind. The Dalai Lama explains that intelligence and reasoning alone are insufficient for true happiness. The cultivation of warmth, empathy, and love is equally essential. Listeners are encouraged to nurture positive emotional qualities through reflection, conscious practice, and compassionate action. By harmonizing heart and mind, individuals create a stable foundation for happiness that is resilient, nurturing, and deeply satisfying. The heart becomes a compass for ethical, meaningful living, guiding actions that bring fulfillment and joy. Listeners are reminded that inner transformation begins with conscious attention to both thought and emotion. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes the importance of interpersonal relationships. Happiness is closely linked to the quality of our connections with others, and supportive, loving relationships foster well-being, security, and contentment. Listeners are encouraged to observe their interactions, cultivate patience, understanding, and genuine care, and resolve conflicts mindfully. By investing in conscious, compassionate relationships, individuals create a positive feedback loop that enhances both personal happiness and the well-being of others. Listeners are reminded that meaningful connection is a cornerstone of a joyful, fulfilled life. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the first chapter by reinforcing that happiness is a skill that can be learned, practiced, and refined over a lifetime. Listeners are encouraged to integrate these practices into daily life, from cultivating mental discipline and acceptance to nurturing compassion, detachment, and positive relationships. By consistently applying these principles, life becomes more peaceful, meaningful, and deeply satisfying. Happiness is not a distant goal, but an ever-present potential accessible in every moment, through conscious attention, compassion, and awareness. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment to continue this transformative journey with Frema Audiobooks as we explore more insights from the art of happiness. Chapter 2: The Sources of Happiness. In this chapter of the art of happiness, the Dalai Lama explores the various sources of true, lasting happiness and explains how it arises from inner qualities rather than external possessions or achievements. As always, remember to subscribe, like, share, and comment to support Frema Audiobooks and remain engaged on this journey toward inner peace, conscious living, and personal growth. By understanding the sources of happiness, listeners can cultivate resilience, joy, and meaningful connections that transform both their inner and outer life. The Dalai Lama begins by emphasizing that happiness is rooted in the mind. Listeners are encouraged to notice how mental attitudes, thought patterns, and habitual judgments shape their emotional experience. External conditions, while influential, are not the primary determinants of well-being. Rather, the state of consciousness and inner perspective plays the central role. By cultivating awareness, mindfulness, and positive mental habits, individuals can create a stable foundation for happiness that is not dependent on circumstance. Listeners are reminded that the mind is both the source of suffering and the key to liberation, and training it is essential for lasting joy. Another essential source of happiness is compassion and altruism. The Dalai Lama explains that focusing on the well-being of others and cultivating empathy strengthens our own sense of fulfillment and reduces selfish preoccupation. Listeners are encouraged to observe moments of self-centeredness or indifference and practice conscious acts of kindness, understanding, and generosity. By helping others and fostering compassionate connections, individuals experience a profound reciprocity. Joy grows naturally as one contributes to the happiness of others. Compassion, he emphasizes, is not just an ethical principle, but a practical tool for mental and emotional well-being. The Dalai Lama also highlights the role of inner discipline and emotional balance. Listeners are encouraged to notice how uncontrolled emotions, reactive patterns, or attachment to desires often create suffering and disrupt happiness. By developing self-awareness and emotional regulation, the mind gains stability, allowing positive qualities such as patience, gratitude, and equanimity to flourish. Inner discipline is not rigid control, but conscious management of thought and feeling to support mental clarity and enduring joy. Listeners are reminded that emotional balance is a cultivated skill, enabling resilience in the face of life's inevitable challenges and uncertainties. Another important source of happiness is ethical conduct and moral responsibility. The Dalai Lama explains that actions aligned with moral principles reduce inner conflict and enhance self-respect, creating a foundation for contentment. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on their daily behavior, considering whether it is guided by honesty, integrity, and respect for others. By living in accordance with ethical values, individuals experience less guilt, anxiety, and inner friction, while fostering trust, harmony, and positive relationships. Happiness, he emphasizes, is deeply intertwined with the choices we make and the way we treat both ourselves and others. The cultivation of mindfulness and present moment awareness is another crucial source of happiness. The Dalai Lama encourages listeners to observe the mind's tendency to dwell on past regrets or future anxieties, which often distract from the experience of life as it is. By practicing mindfulness, individuals anchor themselves in the present, experiencing each moment fully and consciously. Awareness transforms ordinary experiences into sources of insight, gratitude, and joy, reducing mental restlessness and emotional turbulence. Listeners are reminded that happiness arises naturally when consciousness is rooted in the now, unburdened by the constant chatter of the mind. The Dalai Lama also underscores the importance of healthy relationships. Human beings are social creatures, and strong, supportive connections are fundamental to emotional well-being. Listeners are encouraged to nurture relationships with family, friends, and community, practicing empathy, active listening, and mutual respect. Positive relationships provide security, comfort, and opportunities for shared joy, reinforcing the mind's natural orientation toward happiness. Conversely, neglecting interpersonal bonds or cultivating conflict contributes to suffering. Listeners are reminded that relational harmony is both a source and a reflection of inner happiness. Another source of happiness highlighted by the Dalai Lama is the cultivation of perspective and acceptance. Listeners are encouraged to recognize that life is inherently unpredictable, and events often unfold beyond our control. By accepting reality as it is, rather than resisting or clinging to a desired outcome, mental energy is freed from futile struggle and anxiety. Perspective allows challenges to be approached with equanimity and insight, transforming potential sources of suffering into opportunities for learning and growth. Listeners are reminded that acceptance is not passive resignation, but conscious engagement with life, fostering stability, clarity, and peace. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes gratitude and contentment as sources of enduring happiness. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on the abundance present in life, even amidst challenges, and to cultivate appreciation for the small, meaningful aspects of existence. Gratitude shifts attention from lack to sufficiency, reduces envy, and strengthens resilience. Contentment arises when individuals recognize the intrinsic value of life beyond external acquisition or achievement. Listeners are reminded that happiness grows naturally when gratitude and contentment are practiced consistently, forming the bedrock of a fulfilled, joyful life. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the chapter by reinforcing that the sources of happiness are internal qualities that can be developed and refined through consistent practice. Listeners are encouraged to integrate compassion, ethical conduct, emotional balance, mindfulness, perspective, gratitude, and positive relationships into daily life. By doing so, happiness becomes a stable, enduring state rather than a fleeting reaction to circumstances. True joy emerges from conscious cultivation of the mind and heart, transforming life into a meaningful, fulfilling, and harmonious journey. Chapter 3. Training the Mind for Happiness. In this chapter of The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama begins by explaining that the mind is often dominated by negative tendencies, such as anger, fear, attachment, and selfishness, which perpetuate suffering and instability. Listeners are encouraged to observe moments when these tendencies arise in thought or emotion, and recognize the impact they have on daily experience. By cultivating awareness of negative patterns, the first step toward mental training is taken: conscious observation. Training the mind does not mean suppression or denial, but rather the cultivation of insight and choice, allowing positive mental habits to flourish while unhealthy patterns lose dominance. Listeners are reminded that awareness is the foundation for transforming the mind and creating lasting happiness. Another key principle is the development of compassion and altruism as mental habits. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that extending care and empathy to others strengthens inner well-being, reduces self-centered thinking, and enhances relational harmony. Listeners are encouraged to practice imagining the perspectives of others, offering understanding, and acting with kindness in daily life. By repeatedly cultivating compassion, the mind shifts naturally from selfish preoccupation to a state of openness and connection. This mental orientation fosters emotional resilience, reduces stress, and creates a stable foundation for happiness. Listeners are reminded that the more the mind practices empathy and altruism, the more joy and fulfillment arise spontaneously. The Dalai Lama also highlights mindfulness and awareness as central tools for training the mind. Listeners are encouraged to observe thought processes without judgment, noticing the transient nature of mental patterns and the ways in which attachment and aversion generate suffering. By anchoring attention in present moment awareness, the mind becomes calmer, more focused, and less prone to reactive behavior. Mindfulness allows individuals to respond intelligently rather than impulsively, creating space for conscious decision-making and emotional stability. Listeners are reminded that a mind trained in awareness is a mind that experiences life with clarity, presence, and balanced perception. Another essential element is reframing perception and cultivating perspective. The Dalai Lama explains that many sources of unhappiness arise from distorted perception, exaggerated self-interest, or attachment to outcomes. Listeners are encouraged to practice seeing situations from a broader perspective, recognizing impermanence, interconnection, and the limitations of personal control. By consciously adjusting perception, emotional responses become less reactive, and mental energy is conserved for constructive thought and action. Tal, in his own teachings, similarly emphasizes the power of conscious perception in dissolving unnecessary suffering. Listeners are reminded that cultivating perspective allows the mind to navigate life's challenges with equanimity, wisdom, and calm. The Dalai Lama also stresses the importance of self-discipline and habit formation in mental training. Listeners are encouraged to establish routines of reflection, meditation, and conscious practice, gradually replacing unhelpful mental tendencies with constructive ones. Training the mind requires patience, consistency, and deliberate effort, but the results are profound: increased clarity, emotional stability, and an enduring sense of well-being. By committing to mental discipline, individuals develop the ability to respond to stress, uncertainty, and adversity with composure and presence. Listeners are reminded that the process of training the mind is cumulative, and each conscious choice strengthens the foundation for happiness. Another important insight is the cultivation of gratitude and contentment. The Dalai Lama explains that a mind oriented toward appreciation and recognition of life's gifts experiences less envy, dissatisfaction, and craving. Listeners are encouraged to reflect daily on positive experiences, relationships, and personal strengths, allowing gratitude to become a habitual lens through which life is viewed. Contentment does not imply stagnation or passivity, but a stable inner satisfaction that coexists with growth and aspiration. By nurturing gratitude, the mind gradually shifts from scarcity-focused thinking to abundance-focused awareness, enhancing emotional resilience and happiness. The Dalai Lama also highlights the role of forgiveness and letting go of resentment in mental training. Listeners are encouraged to notice when grudges, anger, or past hurts occupy mental space and consciously release them through reflection, empathy, and understanding. Holding on to resentment not only distorts perception, but perpetuates negative emotional patterns, blocking the mind from experiencing joy. By practicing forgiveness, the mind becomes lighter, more focused, and more capable of positive engagement with life. Listeners are reminded that mental freedom, achieved through forgiveness, is a crucial step toward cultivating enduring happiness. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the chapter by emphasizing that training the mind for happiness is an ongoing, lifelong practice that integrates awareness, compassion, perspective, discipline, gratitude, and forgiveness. Listeners are encouraged to integrate these practices into daily routines, observing thought, nurturing positive qualities, and consciously transforming negative patterns. By consistently applying these principles, mental clarity, emotional balance, and a profound sense of inner peace emerge naturally. True happiness is not a fleeting result of circumstance, but a cultivated state of consciousness that transforms every aspect of life. Chapter 4. Training the Heart for Happiness. In this chapter of The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama begins by explaining that the heart is the center of emotional intelligence, and its cultivation is essential for both personal well-being and harmonious relationships. Listeners are encouraged to notice moments when the heart is closed, judgmental, or self-protective, and to observe how these tendencies affect interactions with others and internal peace. By consciously opening the heart through compassion, understanding, and empathy, individuals foster a deeper sense of connection, emotional stability, and inner contentment. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that the quality of the heart directly shapes the quality of life, influencing both mental clarity and emotional resilience. Another key principle is the practice of compassion as a daily exercise. The Dalai Lama explains that compassion is not merely a moral ideal, but a practical tool for cultivating happiness and reducing suffering. Listeners are encouraged to actively look for opportunities to help others, extend understanding, and alleviate suffering in small and large ways. Through repeated practice, compassion becomes a natural disposition, transforming the mind and heart simultaneously. By training the heart in compassion, emotional turbulence diminishes, relationships strengthen, and the sense of interconnectedness with others grows, fostering lasting joy. The Dalai Lama also highlights the importance of forgiveness in heart training. Listeners are encouraged to notice lingering resentments, grudges, or past hurts, and to consciously release them through reflection and understanding. Forgiveness does not condone harmful behavior, but frees the individual from the negative mental and emotional patterns that block happiness. By letting go of anger and resentment, the heart becomes lighter, more open, and more capable of experiencing joy and love. Listeners are reminded that forgiveness is a practical and powerful method for cultivating inner peace and emotional freedom. Another essential insight is the cultivation of gratitude and appreciation in the heart. The Dalai Lama explains that gratitude strengthens emotional well-being, reduces envy, and shifts attention from scarcity to abundance. Listeners are encouraged to reflect daily on aspects of life, relationships, and personal strengths that inspire appreciation and thankfulness. Gratitude transforms ordinary experiences into sources of joy, enhancing both mental and emotional resilience. By cultivating a grateful heart, listeners reinforce positive emotional patterns, creating a foundation for happiness that is independent of external circumstances. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes mindful emotional awareness as a central component of heart training. Listeners are encouraged to observe emotions as they arise without judgment or suppression, noticing their impermanent nature and their impact on thought and behavior. By maintaining awareness, individuals prevent destructive emotions from dominating their actions and cultivate the ability to respond intelligently and compassionately. This practice strengthens the heart by integrating emotional balance with conscious attention, fostering clarity, resilience, and stability. Listeners are reminded that training the heart requires both awareness and active cultivation of positive qualities. Another important practice is developing patience and tolerance. The Dalai Lama explains that impatience, irritability, and intolerance create inner turbulence and disrupt harmonious relationships. Listeners are encouraged to observe moments when these tendencies arise and to respond consciously with calmness, understanding, and acceptance. Patience allows the heart to remain centered in challenging situations, reducing stress, conflict, and emotional reactivity. By cultivating tolerance and patience, listeners strengthen emotional intelligence, relational harmony, and the foundation for enduring happiness. The Dalai Lama also discusses the integration of heart and mind. Listeners are encouraged to recognize that true happiness arises when mental clarity and emotional warmth coexist. A heart trained in compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude complements a mind trained in awareness, perspective, and discipline. By balancing these dimensions, individuals experience a holistic form of well-being that supports both personal fulfillment and positive relationships. Listeners are reminded that the integration of heart and mind is an ongoing practice, requiring conscious attention and consistent cultivation in daily life. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the chapter by reinforcing that training the heart is essential for achieving lasting happiness. Listeners are encouraged to integrate compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, patience, and mindful emotional awareness into daily life, cultivating a disposition that transforms both internal experience and outward interactions. By consistently practicing these qualities, the heart becomes a stable source of joy, emotional resilience, and meaningful connection, complementing the training of the mind to create a fully balanced, harmonious, and fulfilling life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment to continue this transformative journey with Frema Audiobooks as we explore more insights from the art of happiness. Chapter 5: Overcoming Anxiety, Anger, and Insecurity. In this chapter of the art of happiness, the Dalai Lama explores practical strategies for overcoming some of the most common obstacles to inner peace: anxiety, anger, and insecurity. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on their own experiences with these emotions, noticing how they influence thought, behavior, and relationships, and to consider how conscious cultivation of awareness, compassion, and emotional regulation can transform these challenges into opportunities for growth. By understanding the root causes of these emotions and learning how to address them skillfully, listeners can experience a more balanced, peaceful, and joyful life. The Dalai Lama begins by explaining that anxiety arises from attachment to outcomes, fear of uncertainty, and excessive focus on the future. Listeners are encouraged to notice when the mind creates worries, catastrophes, or what-if scenarios that generate tension and unease. By practicing present moment awareness and mindful attention, individuals can observe anxiety without becoming fully identified with it, recognizing its transient nature and diminishing its power. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that anxiety is largely a product of the mind's habitual patterns and can be transformed through conscious engagement, reflection, and inner discipline. Listeners are reminded that the first step toward overcoming anxiety is cultivating awareness and learning to anchor consciousness in the now. The Dalai Lama explains that cultivating patience, empathy, And understanding weakens the grip of anger and prevents it from escalating into harmful action. Listeners are reminded that anger, when approached mindfully, can become a teacher, revealing areas of the mind that require compassion, understanding, and conscious transformation. The Dalai Lama also highlights the role of insecurity and low self-esteem in undermining happiness. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on moments when self-doubt, fear of judgment, or feelings of inadequacy influence decisions, relationships, or behavior. By cultivating self-awareness, self-compassion, and confidence grounded in inner values rather than external validation, individuals can reduce insecurity and strengthen emotional resilience. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that security and confidence are best cultivated from within, through conscious mental training, compassion, and ethical living. Listeners are reminded that self-awareness and self-respect are essential foundations for overcoming insecurity and building lasting happiness. Another key principle is the practice of transforming negative emotions into positive energy. The Dalai Lama explains that emotions such as anxiety, anger, and insecurity are signals from the mind and heart, indicating areas that need conscious attention and cultivation. Listeners are encouraged to observe these emotions, understand their source, and redirect the energy toward constructive thoughts, compassion, and mindful action. By transforming emotional energy rather than suppressing it, the mind and heart are strengthened, creating resilience, clarity, and stability. Listeners are reminded that this transformation requires consistent practice, but results in a profound increase in emotional intelligence and well-being. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes the importance of compassion and empathy as antidotes to negative emotions. Listeners are encouraged to extend understanding and kindness to themselves and others when negative feelings arise. Compassion weakens attachment to anger, reduces fear, and diminishes insecurity, creating a harmonious emotional environment, both internally and externally. By practicing empathy and kindness, emotional patterns are reshaped, transforming habitual responses into deliberate, conscious action. Listeners are reminded that cultivating compassion is not only beneficial to others, but essential for personal happiness and inner stability. Another important practice is mindful reflection and meditation. The Dalai Lama encourages listeners to dedicate time each day to observe the mind, emotions, and thought patterns in a structured and calm environment. Meditation allows individuals to notice recurring negative patterns, develop insight, and cultivate positive qualities such as patience, gratitude, and equanimity. Over time, this practice reduces the intensity and frequency of anxiety, anger, and insecurity, replacing them with emotional balance and inner peace. Listeners are reminded that meditation is a practical, actionable tool that strengthens both mind and heart. The Dalai Lama also highlights the value of ethical living and responsible action in mitigating negative emotions. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on the alignment between actions, values, and long-term well-being. When behavior is consistent with ethical principles, inner conflict decreases, self-respect increases, and destructive emotions are less likely to dominate. By living responsibly, individuals reinforce a sense of stability, confidence, and contentment, creating conditions that naturally reduce anxiety, anger, and insecurity. Listeners are reminded that ethical living is not rigid dogma, but a practical guide to fostering emotional harmony and happiness. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the chapter by reinforcing that overcoming anxiety, anger, and insecurity is a lifelong practice rooted in awareness, compassion, ethical living, and emotional training. Listeners are encouraged to integrate these strategies into daily life, observe emotional patterns, cultivate positive mental and emotional qualities, and respond consciously rather than reactively. By consistently applying these practices, emotional turbulence diminishes, mental clarity deepens, and lasting happiness emerges. Life becomes more balanced, resilient, and joyful, grounded in conscious engagement with both mind and heart. Chapter 6. Facing Suffering. In this chapter of The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama explores the reality of suffering and how conscious awareness, compassion, and mental discipline allow us to face life's inevitable challenges with courage and grace. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on their own experiences of suffering, whether emotional, physical, or psychological, and to notice how resistance or avoidance can amplify pain, whereas conscious engagement and acceptance can transform hardship into growth. By understanding suffering and learning to respond skillfully, listeners can cultivate profound peace and emotional balance, even in difficult circumstances. The Dalai Lama begins by explaining that suffering is an inherent part of life. Listeners are encouraged to recognize that no one is exempt from challenges, setbacks, or moments of pain, and that resistance to these experiences often exacerbates distress. Rather than denying or suppressing suffering, the practice of facing it with awareness allows individuals to reduce unnecessary mental anguish and gain insight into the nature of impermanence and interconnection. By observing suffering without judgment or avoidance, the mind becomes clearer and the heart becomes stronger, creating the foundation for lasting well-being. Listeners are reminded that conscious engagement with suffering is not a sign of weakness, but a path to resilience and growth. Another essential insight is that acceptance is the first step in facing suffering. The Dalai Lama explains that resisting life as it is generates tension, frustration, and emotional turmoil, whereas acceptance opens the door to intelligent response and conscious action. Listeners are encouraged to notice when they cling to idealized expectations, resist change, or dwell on regrets, and to practice letting life unfold as it does. Acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. Rather, it is a conscious recognition of reality, allowing energy to be directed toward constructive choices and compassionate action. By practicing acceptance, individuals reduce unnecessary suffering and create space for insight, clarity, and inner peace. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes the role of compassion in responding to suffering. Listeners are encouraged to cultivate empathy toward their own pain and the pain of others, recognizing the universality of suffering as a shared human experience. By responding with compassion rather than self-pity, blame, or anger, individuals transform suffering into an opportunity for growth and connection. Compassion strengthens the heart, reduces emotional isolation, and fosters resilience, allowing both personal and interpersonal transformation. Listeners are reminded that facing suffering with a compassionate heart is essential for cultivating enduring happiness and meaningful relationships. Another key principle is understanding the mind-body connection in the experience of suffering. The Dalai Lama explains that mental states, thoughts, and emotions directly influence physical health and overall well-being. Listeners are encouraged to observe how stress, anxiety, or unresolved emotional pain manifests in bodily tension, fatigue, or illness. By cultivating mindfulness, relaxation, and conscious awareness, the mind can be trained to reduce unnecessary physical and emotional suffering. Through this integration of mind and body, individuals gain tools to respond skillfully to life's challenges and maintain inner balance. Listeners are reminded that a conscious mind supports a resilient body, creating a foundation for enduring happiness. The Dalai Lama also highlights the importance of perspective in facing suffering. Listeners are encouraged to view hardship not only as a source of pain, but also as a potential opportunity for growth, self-understanding, and spiritual development. By adopting a broader perspective, individuals can see suffering as temporary, interconnected with life's larger processes, and transformative when approached with awareness. This shift in perception reduces fear, discouragement, and emotional overwhelm, allowing the mind to remain stable and open. Listeners are reminded that cultivating perspective strengthens resilience, insight, and the capacity to experience joy even amid challenges. Another essential practice is mindful reflection and meditation. The Dalai Lama encourages listeners to dedicate time to calmly observe their suffering, analyze its causes, and cultivate understanding without becoming overwhelmed. Meditation fosters emotional clarity, reduces reactivity, and strengthens the capacity to respond consciously rather than habitually. Over time, regular practice of reflection and meditation transforms the way suffering is experienced, allowing it to become a teacher rather than a source of despair. Listeners are reminded that meditation is a practical tool for facing suffering with awareness, patience, and equanimity. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes ethical living and compassionate action as ways to mitigate suffering. Listeners are encouraged to align their behavior with values such as honesty, responsibility, and empathy, which reduce internal conflict and enhance emotional resilience. Acting with integrity fosters trust, stability, and positive relationships, creating conditions that buffer against unnecessary suffering. By contributing to the well-being of others and cultivating a sense of moral purpose, individuals transform adversity into meaningful engagement with life. Listeners are reminded that ethical living is both a practical and profound method for reducing suffering and cultivating lasting happiness. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the chapter by reinforcing that facing suffering consciously transforms life. Listeners are encouraged to integrate acceptance, compassion, mindful reflection, perspective, and ethical living into daily practice, turning hardship into a pathway for growth, understanding, and joy. By embracing suffering as part of life rather than resisting it, mental and emotional turbulence diminishes, clarity and inner strength grow, and true happiness emerges from a balanced mind and compassionate heart. Life becomes not only bearable but deeply meaningful and fulfilling. Chapter 7: Self-Discipline and Mental Training. In this chapter of The Art of Happiness, the Dalai Lama explores the crucial role of self-discipline and mental training in achieving lasting happiness, emphasizing that inner peace and contentment are cultivated through consistent, conscious effort rather than external circumstances alone. By integrating self-discipline and mental training into life, listeners can build a strong foundation for clarity, compassion, and enduring joy. The Dalai Lama begins by explaining that the mind is both the source of suffering and the gateway to happiness, and therefore requires consistent training. Listeners are encouraged to observe how uncontrolled thoughts, impulsive reactions, and habitual negative patterns can dominate consciousness and create inner turbulence. Through self-discipline, one gradually develops the ability to regulate thought and emotion, redirect mental energy toward constructive practices, and cultivate positive habits that reinforce well-being. Mental training is not a rigid exercise, but a conscious, compassionate practice that strengthens awareness, emotional balance, and ethical behavior. Listeners are reminded that the mind is like a garden. With careful attention and consistent care, it can flourish and become a source of peace, clarity, and joy. Another key principle is the practice of mindfulness as a daily discipline. The Dalai Lama emphasizes that regular observation of thought and emotion allows individuals to recognize patterns, respond intentionally, and prevent destructive mental habits from dominating consciousness. Listeners are encouraged to dedicate time each day to mindfulness practice, whether through meditation, reflection, or simple awareness of daily activities. This discipline strengthens focus, reduces reactivity, and cultivates clarity of perception. By anchoring consciousness in the present moment, individuals create a stable mental foundation that supports happiness, resilience, and conscious engagement with life. The Dalai Lama also highlights the cultivation of compassion as part of mental training. Listeners are encouraged to practice empathy, kindness, and altruistic thought consistently, observing how compassionate thinking reshapes mental patterns and emotional responses. By intentionally nurturing compassion, the mind gradually shifts from self-centered preoccupation to outward concern for others, which in turn enhances inner well-being. Mental training is most effective when the heart is engaged alongside the intellect, creating harmony between thought, emotion, and action. Listeners are reminded that self-discipline without compassion can become rigid or mechanical, whereas integrating compassion strengthens both mental and emotional resilience. Another essential aspect of self-discipline is ethical conduct and moral responsibility. The Dalai Lama explains that aligning actions with moral principles reduces inner conflict, promotes self-respect, and fosters positive relationships, all of which contribute to enduring happiness. Listeners are encouraged to examine daily behavior and consider whether it is consistent with values such as honesty, integrity, and responsibility toward others. Ethical living supports mental clarity by minimizing guilt, regret, and negative emotional patterns. By integrating moral responsibility into mental training, the mind becomes more stable, focused, and conducive to genuine joy. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes patience and perseverance as crucial components of self-discipline. Listeners are encouraged to observe how the mind often seeks instant gratification or avoids challenges, and to practice sustained effort in developing positive mental habits, despite difficulties or setbacks. Mental training requires consistent application, self-reflection, and gentle persistence. Over time, this disciplined approach strengthens the mind's capacity to remain calm, focused, and balanced in the face of life's uncertainties. Listeners are reminded that perseverance is not rigid stubbornness, but a compassionate commitment to personal growth and well-being. Another important element is transforming negative emotions through awareness. The Dalai Lama explains that anger, fear, and anxiety often arise from habitual mental patterns, but conscious observation allows these emotions to be recognized and redirected. Listeners are encouraged to practice noticing the initial signs of negative emotions, reflecting on their origins, and choosing responses grounded in understanding, compassion, and clarity. By integrating this practice into self-discipline, individuals gain mastery over the mind rather than being dominated by it. This process gradually transforms emotional turbulence into stability, insight, and inner peace. The Dalai Lama also highlights the interconnection of mind, body, and heart in effective mental training. Listeners are encouraged to cultivate harmony between thought, emotion, and physical well-being, recognizing that neglect in any area can disrupt overall balance. Practices such as mindful breathing, gentle exercise, meditation, and reflective thinking reinforce the alignment of mind and heart, creating a holistic approach to self-discipline. By maintaining this integration, mental training becomes more sustainable and deeply transformative, enhancing both inner happiness and external effectiveness. Listeners are reminded that self-discipline encompasses the whole person, mind, heart, and body working in harmony. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes the chapter by reinforcing that self-discipline and mental training are lifelong practices essential for achieving enduring happiness. Listeners are encouraged to integrate mindfulness, compassion, ethical living, patience, perseverance, and holistic awareness into daily life. By doing so, the mind becomes stronger, clearer, and more resilient, emotional patterns become balanced, and true happiness emerges from a conscious, disciplined, and compassionate engagement with life. Final thoughts. Conclusion. The Dalai Lama begins the conclusion by emphasizing that happiness is a skill to be learned, not an accidental state bestowed by external events. Listeners are encouraged to notice how often people search for happiness in material possessions, recognition, or temporary pleasures, only to find these efforts unsatisfying over time. True happiness is rooted in the mind's qualities: awareness, compassion, patience, and gratitude, which can be consciously developed and strengthened with practice. By focusing on internal development rather than external accumulation, listeners create a stable foundation for joy that persists even in challenging circumstances. This insight highlights the transformative power of self-awareness and disciplined inner cultivation. Another central reflection is the interconnectedness of all human beings and the role of compassion in sustaining happiness. The Dalai Lama explains that by cultivating empathy, understanding, and concern for others, listeners not only alleviate the suffering of those around them, but also enrich their own sense of fulfillment and purpose. Human warmth and altruistic engagement act as catalysts for deep, lasting happiness, fostering meaningful relationships and a sense of belonging. Listeners are reminded that the happiness of the individual is inseparable from the happiness of others, and that conscious efforts to promote well-being beyond oneself enhance personal contentment and inner peace. The Dalai Lama also highlights the integration of mind and heart as essential for holistic well-being. Listeners are encouraged to continue practicing awareness, reflection, and self-discipline while simultaneously cultivating compassion, forgiveness, patience, and gratitude. This integration ensures that intellectual understanding does not remain abstract, but translates into lived experience, creating a balanced, resilient, and joyful life. By harmonizing thought and feeling, listeners develop a stable internal environment from which conscious, positive action naturally emerges. This unity of mind and heart is central to the ongoing journey of personal transformation and sustained happiness. Another key point is the importance of facing challenges with awareness and resilience. The Dalai Lama reminds listeners that suffering, setbacks, and adversity are inevitable aspects of life, but how one responds determines the impact on well-being. By cultivating patience, acceptance, and perspective, difficulties become opportunities for growth, insight, and deepening of character. Listeners are encouraged to approach life's obstacles as teachers, learning from each experience to strengthen emotional stability, wisdom, and compassionate engagement. Resilience, he emphasizes, is not simply enduring hardship, but consciously transforming experience into insight, empathy, and constructive action. The Dalai Lama also emphasizes ethical living as a cornerstone of happiness and purpose. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on their values and ensure that daily actions align with integrity, honesty, and responsibility toward others. Ethical conduct reduces inner conflict, fosters trust and harmony in relationships, and reinforces self-respect, all of which contribute to lasting contentment. By consistently integrating ethics into daily life, the mind becomes more stable, the heart more open, and the foundation for enduring happiness solidified. Listeners are reminded that happiness is both an internal achievement and a reflection of one's engagement with the world. Another important reflection is the power of mindfulness and present moment awareness. The Dalai Lama underscores that much suffering arises from clinging to past regrets or worrying about future uncertainties. Listeners are encouraged to cultivate the habit of living fully in the present, observing thoughts and emotions without attachment or judgment. Awareness of the present moment fosters clarity, reduces stress, and allows joy to arise naturally from daily life. By consistently practicing mindfulness, individuals strengthen the mind's capacity for calm, insight, and intentional action, creating a fertile ground for happiness to flourish. The Dalai Lama also highlights the ongoing, lifelong nature of the pursuit of happiness. Listeners are reminded that cultivating mental clarity, compassion, ethical behavior, emotional balance, and resilience is not a one-time effort, but a continuous process that deepens with practice over time. By committing to this lifelong path, the mind and heart develop flexibility, stability, and capacity for joy regardless of circumstance. Happiness becomes not a fleeting emotion, but a reliable, cultivated state that supports meaningful engagement with life, the fulfillment of purpose, and the enrichment of both self and others. Finally, the Dalai Lama concludes by inspiring listeners to integrate all the principles of the book into daily practice, creating a life that is harmonious, balanced, and deeply fulfilling. By cultivating compassion, ethical conduct, awareness, patience, gratitude, resilience, and the integration of mind and heart, happiness becomes a lived reality rather than an abstract concept. Listeners are encouraged to carry these practices forward, transforming every moment into an opportunity for growth, joy, and conscious engagement with life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment to continue this transformative journey with Frema Audiobooks, and to explore more books that inspire personal growth, inner peace, and lasting happiness.